This is Brian Dolby reporting from the LTE World Summit. I'm with Tony Gray of the TCCA. Tony, an important debate has just taken place this morning about LTE, critical communications. Are they going to come together? What are the issues?
Right, well, first of all, let me explain what is TCCA. It's the Tetra and Critical Communications Association. So we're coming from this background of being all about Tetra, which, as you know, is the narrowband, voice, critical communications, public safety, technology of choice. But the future is all about broadband. So in the TCCA, we formed yet another acronym, the CCBG, the Critical Communications Broadband Group, and we've been focused on trying to drive the standardization of LTE as the technology of choice towards providing the features and facilities that critical communications users need and enjoy currently with their Tetra capability.
Yeah, so the issue is really, can LTE provide the absolute guaranteed service in these critical, moments such as, disasters, sadly acts of terrorism, this sort of thing, when the police, the fire, the ambulance, all those services, their systems have to work.
Exactly, and those are our prime concerns, obviously. There are a few features and capabilities of LTE that we absolutely have to have as bottom line non-negotiables. But we've been quite successful already in 3GPP, the standardization organization, in getting at least two of those. First of all, group working, the ability to make a one-to-many call. And secondly, what 3GPP calls proximity services, and what we think of as direct mode, device to device, outside the infrastructure coverage. So those are now accepted work items and will be being worked on for Release 12. But beyond that, we need and absolutely must have the resilience, the reliability, the availability, particularly in times of crisis, which of course currently, particularly commercial networks, can't necessarily guarantee. And I like to quote a very good example, always unfortunate situations, but in this case, the 7/7 bombings in London, all of the commercial networks were necessarily almost immediately overloaded. Everybody's calling home, looking at the internet, updating Facebook, taking pictures and sending them. And so if the emergency services or any critical user had been trying to use a commercial network for their day job at that point, they would have been out of luck, and the general public would have definitely suffered. So we have to find mechanisms for getting those kinds of capabilities embedded in the networks of future choice to deliver those kinds of services for critical users.
Because we don't want to find out how great Tetra was when it's too late, do we?
Well, exactly right. And, there's no sense of wanting to throw the baby out with the bathwater in that sense. Another aspect of this, of course, is that Tetra is still very much alive and kicking and will be with us for very many years to come. The standard itself is still expanding. So, again, there's a continuum there of, for example, in the UK, where they've had a very good Tetra service for more than 10 years now, those contracts are coming up for renewal, and the aspiration is that the service will be provided by a commercial operator using an LTE capability. But again, we cannot afford that those emergency service and other critical users who are so used to having a very capable and very available Tetra ability for their voice communications suddenly find that the new broadband and much faster and much snazzier data capability is not quite so available and alive. At the other end of the scale, my company, P3 Communications, is working in Germany with the federal government on their Tetra rollout, and that is still just a rollout. They haven't finished yet. So the German authorities will not want to be investing in future capabilities for at least another 10 years. So there's a wide continuum there of who wants what and when, which again we have to be able to satisfy with all the work we're doing.
Well, I mean, Tetra's been such a phenomenal success, and I know you've been it from the beginning, and you've worked your way through it. I didn't say anything. I can't talk, can I? But I mean, what do you think? Where do you think it'll go?
Well, for sure, we can't afford to stand still and we can't put our heads in the sand. And that's absolutely why, as the Critical Communications Broadband Group, we are working hard towards the future, which inevitably is going to be broadband and these days is predicated on LTE. So definitely we're going to get the capabilities within the standard at some future point, and that's not quite entirely clear yet. The timelines are not set in stone. But how quickly that then converts into available and proven and tried and tested equipment is a question mark. And also when spectrum in which to operate these things might be available is also a big question mark. For the meantime, only North America, Australia and very, very recently the United Arab Emirates in the Middle East have dedicated some spectrum in 700 or 800 megahertz for what's generally referred to as PPDR, public protection and disaster relief. Everywhere else, and particularly in Europe, there is no spectrum in which to operate such capabilities. And it's actually regardless of whether you're going to think in terms of the traditional model of a dedicated national network a la Tetra, or whether you go very much more towards the operator or MVNO type model. Regardless of those delivery mechanisms, if you like, you're still going to need spectrum in which to put it. So that's a very pressing point for us and a very key point. The other one, of course, is money, as always. You don't get these things for free, and so we're working very hard in CCBG again to try to develop what we call the strategic case, which is kind of like the value proposition, the business case that justifies why do you guys, these critical users, why do you have to have broadband? Why can't you just carry on with your good old Tetra network?
Okay, now I'm either in LTE or I'm in critical, and I'm concerned about this. How do I get involved in the debate? Perhaps even shape the way things go.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'd say is have a look at the TCCA.com website. There's I think rather good and balanced white paper published on there, which spells out some of the issues around timescales, standardization processes, and what the sort of interim migration strategy might be. So a useful document just for reference for anyone who's interested. But then if you really would like to get involved, then obviously I would say, wouldn't I, but really it is the case, join the TCCA, and then you can participate in our group, the Critical Comms Broadband Group, and help us to drive forward this agenda of getting the standards right, finding the spectrum, justifying the investment, and hopefully for the longer term actually delivering this capability for the users out there who really need it.
Tony, thanks very much for talking to us. I feel a debate that's only just started.
Oh, absolutely, and I fully expect to be talking to you again next year and maybe the year after, but hopefully with updates and positive news.
Okay, well, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much, a pleasure.